Amanda, what'd you do for Halloween?
I got drunk and fell asleep at 6 o'clock. What did you do for Halloween?
I played D&D and watched American Horror Story and then praised my ancestors.
Did you really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look at you.
Warning. The topics discussed on this podcast are subject to adult themes and languages. We seek to unravel the unexplained and unknown. This is Encounters.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Encounters. My name's Dakota.
I'm Amanda.
And today, we are going to be talking about the Bell Witch.
Creepy.
I mean, yeah, it is a little creepy. It's
it's interesting.
It's documented. It's well documented.
I mean,
there's a lot of books.
And documentaries.
And a lot of people got a lot to say about it.
Sure do. Oh my lord. It's got a lot going on.
I had never heard of the Bell Witch before now, and I actually had seen American Haunting, and I did not even know it was about the Bell Witch.
I don't know if I've seen American Haunting.
To be honest with you, I didn't even remember if I had seen it until I watched a couple scenes. I was like, oh yeah, I've seen that.
Right. People think the Blair Witch Project is based off of it. It's not really, but I think it kinda is.
I mean, I could see it.
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised, but it's definitely not the same story.
Right? It definitely goes in a completely different direction. Kinda.
I mean, what if people ended up in Bell Cave, standing like that dude at the end of the movie, just waiting to die?
I don't know. Can I be honest? I've never seen Blair Witch Project.
Really?
I've seen the second one for some weird reason. I watch the weirdest movies.
What the fuck? The second one, Book of Shadows?
Yeah, I really liked it until I realized it was horrible.
I felt like Blair Witch 2 was the sad homage to trying to make a Craft 2.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I don't know. I just never watched Blair Witch. I love horror films, but I never watched Blair Witch.
The first time I tried to watch Blair Witch, my mother was watching it, and we were 8 or 9. And my mom was like, no, you gotta leave. You can't watch this. And I was like, why the fuck are you freaking out? They were just videotaping the woods. Nothing is literally happening.
Yeah.
And then I remember it zooming up on these stick figures and my mom being like, no, turn it off. I was like, this is ridiculous. To this day, it doesn't scare me. I can see why it scares people, but I guess it was ruined for me early on that it was fake, and so I was like, why is this scary? This isn't scary to me. But what it spawned, I believe it's what gave rise to Paranormal Activity and shit like that.
Yeah, found footage this inspired.
Yeah.
Any found footage movie is inspired by Blair Witch because it redefined the genre.
Speaking of horror movies that redefine the genre or reach out and touch us, tell us about how Annabelle affected you here recently, Amanda.
Dakota's pretty sure that Annabelle cursed me because I guess I called her name. And
go back and listen to the Annabelle and Robert episode and see what Amanda said to Annabelle.
Well, guys, my car started acting up. And I was driving to get myself some food, and my car completely stalled. I had no brakes. I had no acceleration. I was on a busy road in the far left lane, so I couldn't stop, and I was freaking out, screaming. I was able to eventually get home after some time. I did think I was going to die, though, because I had to turn into a parking lot and through an intersection, and all the cars were coming at me, and I couldn't speed up to go across the street. So I was very, very scared. And then the next day, my car completely died. After I got it fixed, I was making a joke to Dakota about how...
Literally, after she got it fixed, she called me, you guys. It was like, Annabelle, I think, has got back at me for saying some bad things to her.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe she has. And what did you say, Amanda?
I was like, fuck that. No, what did I say? Why is she mad because I called her a bitch or something like that? Something like that. And right as I say that, a car tried to sideswipe me. I started screaming, and Dakota's like, stop! I'm sorry. Dakota's like,
you better stop! You better stop!
Just stop talking about her! And so, Dakota's pretty sure Annabelle tried to kill me.
And I'm still surprised you're not pretty sure Annabelle tried to kill you, and you better ask for forgiveness.
Oh my
Annabelle,
gosh.
I apologize for Amanda. Please don't take my friend's life.
Oh my gosh. After that, I went home and like saged my whole apartment. I saged myself, so it's been better.
Did you sage your car?
I hadn't, because I just felt crazy going outside. One thing, it's been raining and snowing in Santa Fe, and I felt a little crazy going outside, like with my stick, just like saging my car. So I hadn't, but I did sage myself, and I prayed. So.
Did you apologize to Annabelle?
Nah, cause I got Jesus and anime on my side, so I'm not scared.
Well, okay then. I don't know if anime is gonna save you from Annabelle.
I don't know. But I'm sure glad to be alive.
I'm sure glad you got to be alive too, and that you got to meet that nice man that fixed your car.
All right, he sure did just pop up out of nowhere. So, anyway, what are we talking about today? Because I can't be thinking about that mechanic.
The Bell Witch.
Oh yes, this is an oldie but a goodie.
I don't know if it's all that good.
I mean, if it happened,
it's entertaining, that's for sure.
If it happened, that's some crazy shit. If it really happened, though,
it would be some crazy shit if it really happened.
And we'll see what you guys think after we tell you the story.
All in all, it is one of America's first and
best known,
best documented hauntings.
Yes.
And there is a point in this story where we reach a point in American history that it becomes infamous. So there's some context to this that we need to talk about.
Okay.
So our lore, the story we're about to tell, takes place in 1817. Mm-hmm. Did you know, Amanda, that there was a historical phenomenon that happened in 1816 where the sun was actually blacked out?
Really?
For the greater part of a year?
What? I didn't know about that. I've not heard about
1816 was famously known as the year without a sun.
Huh.
So leading up to the start of these Bell Witch activities, we have just come out of a year with no sun.
That's crazy.
Now, Amanda, take us back to 1817.
Well, I'm actually going to take you back to 1804. Ooh. 1804 is when John Bell and his wife, Lucy, had moved from North Carolina to Tennessee with their 9 kids and slaves. Moved to Tennessee, where he acquired about 360 acres of land, where he built his house on and, was raising his family. But in 1817 is when his family started to experience these crazy paranormal activities that would last for, 4 or 5 years?
At least.
Somewhere around there. So this all started when John Bell was out in his garden checking on his crops when he sees a strange animal.
Annabelle.
I know, she's already. I'm gonna start coughing up.
She says, "I know about you. I know you saying
I'm
this
sorry."
Shit. Lorraine's gonna show up on your doorstep and be like, "Listen, I have a message. You need to stop messing with my dog."
I'm not trying to. It's a term of endearment, okay?
I don't know if the demonic presence recognizes our modern day lingo.
It should, though. I'm trying to be her friend. I call my friend bitches all the time. It's nothing bad. It just means I love you. Anyway, back to John and this strange animal. So this thing was crazy looking. It's said to have the body of a dog and the head of a rabbit. So he sees this freaky looking thing and he shoots at it and the thing takes off. And actually, John Bell went on all these hunting expeditions to try to find this animal, and he was never able to find it. But that same night is when his family started being woken up by taps and knocking on their walls. So after that is when they start also hearing this faint singing. They say the singing sounded like it was an old lady singing hymns, right?
They also had reports from a young servant boy named Dean that he was seeing these strange creatures lurking in the courtyards. They were misfigured animal, a lot like the rabbit dog.
Yes.
Mentioned earlier. But as Amanda said, this thing would find its real victim in Betsy Bell, the younger daughter of John Bell Sr. Betsy would start to wake up with whelps and slaps across her body. There were actually moments in the house where members of the family could hear the slaps take place and find the handprint appear on Betsy. There were also encounters where the spirit in the house was starting to pull the covers down off the beds of all the children. Betsy specifically would try and fight back, and she said she would never win.
Yeah.
And there's even a moment where Betsy wakes up and tries to get out of bed, but finds that her hair has been tied into the bedposts and cannot get out of bed.
And the other children were also hearing what sounded like something chewing on their bedposts, and that would also wake them up in the middle of the night. And it's always so interesting how these things try to keep people from sleeping. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah, stay awake, right? Stay awake.
And so the first...
And the thing starts fucking talking to them.
Oh, yeah.
According to the legend, it identifies itself and says,
I am the ghost of Kate Batts.
Mm-hmm. Do we want to talk about Kate now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an important time to talk about Kate.
So, just a little bit, she was a former neighbor who believed that John had treated her unfairly on a land deal, and so she was said to have vowed to want to kill him, and she wanted to prevent Betsy from marrying some boy in town. What else do you know about Kate?
Well, Kate, the lore around Kate has a really horrible image painted of her. One of the things that's talked about quite grandly is that she used to parade around town with this troupe. It was known as Kate's Troupe, and it was 3 slaves that she walked around with, and a saddled horse, saddled for side saddle, like a lady saddle of the time, that she would not ride. So they would all just one slave would lead the horse, and the other 2 would just escort Kate to wherever they were going, while the horse just walked on with them. And that's why she always showed up late everywhere, apparently. She was also a really terrible person in the religious community. There was said to be a moment at a church where a man was confessing his sins, and they believed that he was being exorcised of his sins and demons and whatnot. And Kate is said to have come up and sat on him, threw her petticoat around him, and he thought he was going to hell because it went pitch black in the room, and he started to feel oppression crushing down on him, And the pastor was like, Kay, you gotta get off him. You gotta get off of him. And she was like, no, he thinks he's suffering. Let him suffer.
So
It's like, this
she's
bitch.
a little bit crazy.
But that's all I really have about her. That's what the lore that's been left to us leaves. I don't know if anyone has any solid proof that she was a witch, but there is said to be the curse that she laid on the Bell family for having fucked her over in a land deal.
And then she vowed to kill John.
I heard there was like this weird curse like with their family because of a slave that the Bats family had sold John Bell that they wanted back, and he was like, well, you have her back, but she's gonna have to pay like double. So there was also that, which, I mean, that's horrible in and of itself.
Right? Ugh.
What makes me feel even worse is I feel like that's the land deal that everyone talks about.
Maybe. That's horrible.
That's even worse.
Anyway, John Bell actually really wanted to keep this a secret because, like Dakota said, this was a very I think this was a very religious community, and he was a very big member of the church. So he
Baptist church, I believe.
And he did not tell anybody until he told his friend. So he tells his friend James Johnson all about this haunting, and Johnson decides he wants to see it for himself. So
because he doesn't believe it. He's like, yeah, okay,
right,
whatever.
I probably wouldn't believe it either, to be real with you, but.
But imagine being like in the 18th century, like, oh, you think there's a ghost? Yes, whatever.
You really think that's how they talked?
I mean, maybe it's like, oh, you think there's a ghost in there? Well, we'll see, won't we?
So, James and his wife decided that they're going to stay the night to see if anything happens. And it actually does. They say that during the night they saw objects moving, they heard noises, and they also said that the family started realizing the voices were reading scriptures and singing hymns.
Which is a little weird for a witch.
Yeah. It really is.
Just gonna throw that out there. That's pretext. We'll get back to it.
And as this starts going on more and more, this witch starts calling people out by name, like identifying with people, talking to people, and really, really, really harping on the fact that it wants to kill John, and it's telling Betsy to not marry. I think his name is Joseph Gardner. And I don't understand why this ghost witch thing doesn't want Betsy to marry Mary Gardner, but it's really really harping on this and really terrifying Betsy and choking John Bell, where he says it feels like there's a sharp stick in his mouth. That is how he's being woken up in the middle of the night.
I don't want to wake up in the night with that
I'm
feeling.
telling you. But these...
Is this when they both, like, start to get sick?
Pretty much. He pretty much...
In 1819?
Yeah, he pretty much gets excommunicated from the church because of all of these hauntings. And...
People assume that he's, like, associating with the devil because at this time, religion still is king.
Mm-hmm. Like, the story spreads everywhere. He gets excommunicated from his church. And the story actually gets all the way to General Andrew Jackson, who eventually becomes, I think he's the 7th president of the United States later. But this is back when they were fighting in New Orleans. This is after the Battle of New Orleans, where I think he fought the British. So the reason Andrew Jackson actually heard this story is that the 3 oldest Bell sons were in the Battle of New Orleans with him. And after hearing all about this hauntings and stuff, he decided, because he lived in Nashville, he's like, you know what, let's go down and check this out for ourselves. And as Andrew Jackson was actually approaching the farm, he had a wagon and like several men with him. His wagon just stopped. Like the wheels completely locked. The horses could not pull them. He decides to get the men to try to like push, pull. They are trying to get this wagon to go, and Nothing is working. Nothing is happening. It's just stuck. So finally, Andrew Jackson says, "By the eternal, boys, it's the witch." And that's when a female voice says,
All right, General. Let the wagon move on. I will see you again tonight.
and at this moment, that's when the horses were actually able to move and pull the wagon again.
Fuck all that. Nope.
Right?
I am never coming back here
Right?
again, bitch.
That's what I said.
Never.
So Jackson decides he wants to stay. So they set up tents outside, and he's inside talking to Mr. Bell, talking about the war, all these stories. And one of the guys with them is like, you know why? You know why the witch isn't attacking? Is because we're witch tamers. And right when that happened, he actually starts screaming and freaking out. The witch says there's a fraud among you, and I will expose him tonight. So the guys were like, you know what? Let's go. I'm not feeling this. Like, can we leave? And Jackson's like, no, I want to see what happens. I want to see if anything will happen. He's like, let's just go to bed. I'm sure it'll be fine. They didn't even make it through the night. The next morning...
Jackson sounds like that motherfucker that's, like, ready to stir up trouble. Nah,
Right?
nah. I know they just said, she gonna fuck with one of you tonight, but, I mean, nothing gonna happen. Let's see. Let's just see. I mean, maybe you die, maybe you don't, but I'm fine.
The men didn't make it. I think they could have made it to the next morning, or they, like, left within the night. I don't remember exactly. But before he leaves, he goes, this witch is too much. I would rather fight the English and the Battle of New Orleans than mess with this witch. And
this witch is too much.
I would rather be in a war than to mess with this bitch anymore.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so he decides to pack up and leave. He was actually supposed to stay there a week, and they didn't make it through the night. And so the attacks on the family continue until 1920, when Betsy and John start becoming sick.
And this is where the spirit takes a really weird kind of turn. For the last 3 years, it's been plaguing this family. And the moment that Betsy and John get sick, there's a difference in the way it treats them. John is continuously plagued by this spirit. But Betsy starts to receive little trinkets. It would sing hymns to Betsy. It would leave hazelnuts on the bed for Betsy to consume. Eventually, Betsy got better and left the homeboy, and John died. What's really weird about John's death is that his family comes rushing in and discovers his dead body, and there is a weird substance on his mouth and supposedly a jar of poison and a spoon. And by their accounts, the witch says,
I gave Jack a big old dose of that last night, and that fixed him.
And it said that they fed the liquid to a cat, and the cat died immediately. And that's how they knew, like, this thing was poison. This, whatever was in the vial was poison. And it was said that the witch was even singing and laughing at his funeral, and swore to Lucy that she would return 7 years later in 1828. And she actually did. And this is when she told John Bell Jr. Predictions, things like the Civil War and other kind of terrible tragedies.
what is important here with John Bell's death in 1820 is that for the first time in American history, a death is actually blamed on a spirit and accepted as truth. That's monumental.
And there was even...
No one questioned it. No one was like, somebody else poisoned it. It was like, nope, the ghost did it.
And
the witch did it.
It was even in, like, newspaper articles. They talk all about it. Like, it is known that this thing, whatever this Bell Witch was, killed.
There's even physical, old documented history. There's a book called An Authenticated History of the Bell Witch that was written in 1894 by Martin Van Buren Ingram, and it documents the entire history of the Bell family. And if you go to Adams, Tennessee, where the Bell Witch caves are and the old Adams homestead used to sit, you can still buy books written by the family about their experiences with the Bell Witch.
The book was said to be based off of a handwritten diary by Richard Bell, who was around 6 when the hauntings happened, but he waited until I think 1840 to write everything down, and that's what a lot of the book got the information from. Which brings us to
where it is today. We don't really have the Bell Witch haunting anymore because after the death of John Bell, the thing really just kind of goes away. I mean, there are infractions where it comes back a little bit, but then it goes away again. And ultimately, nothing happens anymore except in the caves, which, if you're a Ghost Adventures fan, you'll remember that they went into the Bell Witch caves. I watched that episode today.
Oh, did they? I think I've seen it, but I can't remember. They have so many stuff.
And they caught a lot of activity. They caught a lot of spiritual movement, a lot of spiritual electricity. They got EMF responses from things. And there's even footage where one of the hosts captures a light orb move. And he's like, can you show me in a light orb where you are? And literally, this little light orb moves into the camera, and the voice goes, here I come. I was like, nope, fuck all that. I'm out. The cave itself is a crystal quartz cave, which we know is important for spiritual properties, which I think explains a little bit of why we have energy in the cave that talks.
I can see that.
I don't know.
This thing is not a usual haunting. A lot of people thought it was a poltergeist because of it kind of disappearing after, John Bell died, and Betsy, who didn't end up marrying that guy, she ended up marrying another guy. But I think we'll talk about him a little bit later.
I can see it being a poltergeist. I absolutely can. Look at who it's attacking. Betsy. Look at who Betsy is. A young female. You also have her mother, who is... There's a significant age gap. I think, John Bell Sr. was, 50, 60, and his wife was, 17. Yeah. So, maybe it was her. Who knows? But I can see there being a pubescent kind of manifestation of energy that got really violent. And maybe Kate, or Kat, or whatever it was... Maybe Miss Bats was the personality that the manifestation took on.
Yeah. Or it is an intelligent haunting, and it was actually Kate who was really attacking these people.
But for haunting, it does not make sense to me. And this is why she did not die on the property, but you don't have to die on the property to be there. I get that. But the property has to be of some importance to you. I don't know if you can just be like, I don't know if I can just die and then be like, I want to haunt the White House and just appear at the White House, after I'm dead.
That's the difference, because if this land deal is true, that property did have an importance to Kate. I don't necessarily...
But if the land deal is the slave trade,
that's what I'm saying. If it is true, I don't think it's an intelligent haunting either. I think it's a little too... I would go with poltergeist or a cryptid of some kind.
Well, I mean, there's also the argument of demon. There's people that say it's some kind of demonic haunting, but I don't see any kind of validity
No,
for
because
that.
Normally if it's a demonic haunting, they're trying to get to somebody, to take over, like the Warrens always say. They want something. They normally want to possess somebody.
I think it's really funny that you bring up cryptid, because I've also seen that there's possibility that this could be a djinn.
That could make sense.
There was a book that I got to read a little bit of sections on that was connecting the Bell Witch to the cryptid of the djinn. It was called The Vengeful Djinn, Unveiling the Hidden Agenda of the Genies by Rosemary Gully and Philip sprung, though. But they talk about this portal that's been opened in the West Virginia area, specifically over Point Pleasant. They believe that in the 1800s, a portal opened there, and a bunch of cryptids basically sprung forth. In their version, it's basically a portal from the Jinn, and that they all escaped, and that certain things that appear in the 1800s, specifically in West Virginia, like Mothman and other various cryptids, like weird creatures that can't be explained, disfigured creatures, which we already know are favorites of the Jinn shape-shifting phenomena. I don't know what the word would be. But they speculate that the Jinn, that this is a specific Jinn that just wanted to fuck with people. Yeah. And that a reason that it ties it to the Jinn is because we have the rabbit dog. We have different creatures that various other slaves saw on the property. We have the knocking, we have the terrifying, we have the going after, but then we also have that ability to shift into a more caring sensibility when we bring Betsy Hazelnuts on her sick bed, which gives us the idea that whatever this is sentient. Yeah. But my problem is the name witch is attached to it.
Yeah.
Because maybe Kate Batts was a witch. I don't
doubt
know. But whatever this thing was, I don't really think this thing was the spirit of Kate Batts. I think maybe she did lay a curse. Maybe this is some like hoodoo ritual like acting out. But if this is a poltergeist, a true poltergeist activity, which it's activity that happened, links it to, then I don't know where the curse would come. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe the curse sprung forth the poltergeist activity with Betsy or with the Bell family.
Yeah. So, and some people think it was actually not necessarily a hoax, but since the Bell Witch was very much like, do not marry Joseph Gardner, they thought it was actually the teacher who was trying to marry Betsy, who was somehow trying to scare off her fiance and like convince her. But in the same breath, I don't know how he's doing all that stuff. It's just ironic because when the hauntings started is when he had like moved to town. Oh, I'm sorry. You wanted to talk about witches, didn't you? Back to witches.
You know, we've seen a resurgence of witches in popular media right now. What with American Horror Story,
and now,
well, a lot of things. A lot of people are filling their pagan oats, and being witches now. And there's still a lot of people throwing flack, especially with the new Sabrina that's premiered. Now, I have to admit, I fully do love the new Sabrina, but they embrace a side of witchcraft that is what a lot of people fear, specifically evangelicals, like super really religious people, because in the Sabrina show, they focus on the pact with the devil, Satanism.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's plenty of times when they literally go, praise Satan, and I just laugh my fucking ass off. It's great. But there's some people that can't take that level, and they seem to, like, fear witches. And I got into a discussion with a friend of mine that was like, we have to understand that not all witches are Satanists. Like, maybe there are some Satanist witches. There's also Nordic witches. There's Wiccans. There's all these different kinds of people, and you don't have to subscribe to any one religion to be a witch.
And like I said kind of in the Halloween episode, Christians definitely took the pagan gods and started turning them into their demons and their devils to scare people out of being pagans and to be Christians. So when you see something like where it's very like Satanist oriented, it's like, oh, once again they're trying to make witches look like they're evil and they want to do bad things, when a lot of times I mean, if you study anything, they are supposed to be promoting good things, and if you do something bad, it's going to come back to you, and it's going to be
Right,
worse.
right.
So there,
Because the pagan gods were mostly horned gods of the forest.
and
Which translated to Goat Man,
Satan.
which translated to Satan, which translated to devil, which is like the Satan dick. I don't know.
right, and I always like appreciated like Supernatural's look on Lucifer, which is like a fallen angel, instead of being like, ooh, Goat Man Satan, you know. That's just my personal opinion on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how the amalgamation of Christianity slowly tried to take over a mass population. I mean, it worked.
Mhm.
It really did. But that's been years in the making. That's not centuries in the making. Thousands of years in the
And like
making.
Dakota said,
1,000 at least.
a lot of people now are re-exploring their pagan and witchy sides.
Fill in them pagan oaths.
Mhm.
Fill them for your life.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that we need to open up that narrative. We need to say, not all witches worship Satan.
Probably most don't. Some probably
And
do.
even if they worship a god that looks like you're Satan, back up. It may not be Satan.
Right. And Satanists actually take a lot of oaths. It's not necessarily to worship Satan. It's to worship the free thinking, and it's more about being like you yourself and having free will than like trying to go out and kill people and sacrifice. But anytime you watch like a crime show and they're always like, it's a cult of Satanists, it's never a cult of Satanists. Most of the time they don't kill people.
The person that you like, your local friendly witch is usually probably trying to figure out what herbs are best in the tea and which crystals they're gonna love next.
Exactly.
They're not worried about sacrificing little Billy
Right.
to Satan.
Exactly.
But that's the Bell Witch, y'all.
We hope you enjoyed it.
Took us on so many twists and turns. It's a great story. It's wonderful. I think it is a Jinn. No. I think it's Poltergeist.
I could see either way, either one, because
honestly
it
think
killed the
Betsy-
guy.
I think Betsy was going through some things, and I think maybe the feminine energy in that house was going through some things. I mean, it was 1820.
Yes.
It wasn't a great time for people in general.
Exactly.
And I think the feminine energy may have manifested into a poltergeist, and I think the curse of a land deal with the Bats family may have influenced the energy to come out. We know that the property had crystal quartz on it, so maybe it just manifested into something and then took care of the problem, and then once the problem was gone, everybody's lives kind of got better. I also wonder maybe if Betsy was being forced into that marriage with that guy.
Maybe.
And because once her father was gone, she didn't marry that guy, and the thing disappeared. Today they say if you take stones from the cave that you'll get cursed.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are like, hey, I have bad luck now that I took this stone. Can you put it back in the cave? I don't want to go down there. And like I said, Ghost Adventures caught voices down there, so it's crazy. Join us next week when we talk about...
What the fuck are we talking about next week?
werewolves. Do you want to talk
We
about
can
werewolves?
talk about werewolves.
A general history of werewolves.
Right.
If you like what you hear, please consider leaving a rating or review on iTunes. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, lots of places. Shit, I'm trying to get us on every single thing we can. YouTube now. We have a YouTube channel, y'all. Find us at Encounters of Paranormal EXP. And until next week, I'm Dakota.
I'm Amanda.
Stay spooky, y'all.
Bye.